All right, welcome to the Nathaneal Podcast. Today we have a special guest, a good friend of mine from X, Will Carter. Hey, man.
Hello, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, man, it's great. It's been a while since we talked, so might as well do the podcast kings.
Amazing. Let's do it all in public. I love it.
All right, man. So yeah, we met in a space before, and I remember you telling me that, or like telling the space that you were in a 9 to 5 actually before, or am I correct? Like you were doing a sales
Yeah,
job. Yeah. Can you tell us the story? Because it's really an interesting story.
of course. Yeah. So I got into sales more or less straight out of school. So I finished college, and rather than going off to university like all my friends, I thought, well, I didn't really do much with college. Let's go get a job. Let's get some money and we'll figure
Yeah.
it out. So I got a job with a local insurance company. And my first job was like, I jumped into the deep end. So I was a public liability insurance broker, right? As my first job. Imagine this, 18-year-old kid doesn't know anything about anything, straight into the deep end. And what was amazing about that job, it wasn't necessarily the job itself, but it was the people I got around. I got around a lot of salespeople. So that started to begin my love of sales. And then over the years, I bounced around a little bit because that job got incorporated to another company. But I went into IT, and then I eventually ended up in mortgages. And I was a mortgage sales manager for 10 years pretty much. And that was amazing on one hand, because it was this really high profile, high paying job. And I got into the trap, I fell into the trap of chasing sales figures. And when you get into that trap, then everything else starts to slip away. So I found myself chasing higher and higher sales figures, but also getting more and more and more depressed because I was placing my validation on the sales figures, right? Something outside of me. I was saying, well, I'm only good enough if I hit this particular figure. So even though on the outside I was really successful, I had a great job, I had a good house, I had a good car, all the stuff that people look at and say, that person is a success. Inside, I was feeling like there's got to be more to life than this. I've got what everyone says they want, and I feel worse than ever. So a couple of years ago, I started really studying psychology, right? I got into Bob Proctor, who's my absolute hero, and started studying the art of like inner fulfillment. And this year in April, my company had a round of massive layoffs. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is the sign for me. This is where I need to make that break. I can't live my dream, which at this point now is educating people that everything is truly an inside game, and do this 9 to 5. So that's how I stepped away from it. And the last 4 months, I've just been building much as I can on the internet.
Yeah. Dude, I just got off a podcast the other day, like last week, with another insurance sales guy.
Mm.
He's from Philippines, and he said the exact same thing. I don't know why. Like, there's something with insurance, bro. But like, he also said the same thing. He was like part of the like top 2% salespeople. So he was like at the top, like getting good results, but he just felt empty. Like it was just like he was chasing just the numbers at that point, and he was just unfulfilled. Now he's doing life coaching. So do you think there's something about that, like the sales, it catches up on you, or like?
I think sales is one of the best things that anyone can ever learn, right? I love
Mm,
sales.
yeah,
And I think that everyone should do three things in their life. I think everyone should do military service for the fitness and the mindset. I think everyone should do retail work, so serving people retail to learn the customer service. And everyone should do sales to learn how to be persuasive and how to actually solve problems, right? Because that's what it's all about.
yeah,
What I think that the distinction is, because I see this path going through a lot of people, and if you look back at my hero Bob Proctor, he worked his way up to vice president of sales for the Nightingale Conan Corporation, who's one of like the largest corporations in self development. Sales has always just had this amazing way of discovering the mindset, right? Because sales is a mindset game. So for me, absolutely, there's a connection. And when you chase the figures, right, when you chase external validation, when you try and put your self-worth in what you do and you don't have it inside, eventually that's going to catch up with you. Because every time you have a bad month, it's I'm bad. Every time you have a good month, it's I'm good. Whereas what it should be is you should be developing the I'm good no matter what, and I demonstrate amazing results. And when you come at it from that point of view, it's amazing. And this is what gave birth to my philosophy, the heroic way. So I looked at myself and I was like, I was following the NPC programming to the letter. And this is something I call the industrial funnel, right? Which is you go to school, you go to college, you get a university, you get a job, you work the job, you retire, and you die. That's the funnel. That's the funnel that society wants us to go through. And that is NPC programming. And if you look at our educational system, our religious systems, and our governmental systems, everything points that way. So for me, what I define as an NPC is someone who just follows the programming. They don't think for themselves. They just do what society demands of them. And 95% of people are in that funnel. Whereas a hero is somebody who's intentional. And if you think back to all of the greatest stories, like Lord of the Rings, if you look back to all of the great stories, the hero is the person that says no more. And they go off, I'm thinking of Luke Skywalker, they go on that heroic journey, right? Yeah. And they become somebody better in that journey. They become intentional. And that is what I want to help people see, is that anybody can do that. You don't need to follow that funnel. I think we talked before, like what happened to me was I got into sales and then like a decade fell off the calendar and I turned around and I was like, what the hell just happened? And I really want to try and help other people avoid that, because life is so short. We really want to use it to the best of our ability to experience the best that we can. And we have the choice to do so. We just need to be aware of it.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. Like I just wrote that. But I do want to go back to what you mentioned. It's very interesting. You think that there are 3 things people should go through: military, retail, and sales. And I'm curious, like, have you done military?
I did. Yeah, I did military training. My dad was a 40-year military man. So he was a career soldier. And I was raised very much with that mentality, right? My dad was the strictest person you can imagine. My mom was the softest person you can imagine. So I grew up with all kinds of problems. But the military side of things was great. And when I say military, I don't mean like actively fighting. I mean like just the military training, right? The boot camp, my dad always used to threaten to send me off to military boarding school, and I really wish he had, looking back. Right. But yeah, I think the military side of things teaches you discipline, right? Because like I always say to people, you can never master your reality, because I do believe that everyone experiences the world through their own lens, right? Through their own beliefs and behaviors, and that's their reality. You can never change your reality unless you can self-control. So you need to control yourself and your mind and your thoughts and your actions before you can start to control what's going on outside of you. So self-mastery before reality mastery. And what military discipline does, it does teach you to follow orders, which I don't think is always a good thing, but it teaches you to be responsible for this thing, this body that we have. You're in charge of this. And something I like to tell people is that we are each responsible for our own physical, financial, and spiritual education, because no one's really going to do that for you.
Responsibility.
100%. I've got a little sign on my desk here which says, I am the hero of my own story. I take full responsibility for everything in my life. It's glued to my screen.
Beautiful, man. If you don't mind me sharing my story as well.
Of course.
Like, yeah. So before, like, my life, I grew up without a father. Like, he left before I was born. And my mother was ashamed of an accident child. So what happened was, in a way, I was like, there's a lot of lies that went across. Like, I was adopted, or I was like from another family member, all that stuff. So my life, just like you, had a lot of issues. I also had a lot of issues growing up. And because that, like at that time, I was a kid who kind of like just blown by the wind wherever, because it felt like I didn't have control over my life, because, my father left, and then my mother was doing all this, and I was surrounded by lies. It was really hard for me to take that responsibility. And so I had to blame, like, I blamed a lot of people for the things that was happening around me. And, it gives you a sense of security because it's not your fault. But then what ends up happening is you're expecting someone to fix it rather than you fixing it. And even though they try to fix it, and objectively speaking, you're not in trouble anymore, you still feel like you're not in control because you haven't taken responsibility. So you're still in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's what's important. What you mentioned, the military, I would say responsibility is you only find that freedom when you stop like blaming others and actually solving things on your own.
Love that you brought that up. There's a principle, right, that I live by, which is inside out, as within, so without. It's the oldest Hermetic principle, right? The universe is mental, as within, so without. That means that I am responsible for everything that goes on in my life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I cause everything, but it means I'm always responsible for how I react to everything. And yeah, things happen outside of us that suck. Just to give you an example, my dog went to the vet yesterday. He got potential kidney cancer. It sucks. But like, I don't control that, but I do control exactly how I react to it. And it's always like, okay, well, I choose in this moment to give that the best meaning I possibly can. And there's a wonderful law, which I think for people like you and I who've had those like tumultuous childhoods, because like, to give you the full story, I ran away from home when I was 14. And not just ran away from home, I ran away from Spain to the UK.
Dude, you're
So,
from
and
Spain?
well, originally from the UK, but my parents moved to Spain. And I was like, I'm going back. I'm going back. You can't keep me here. And if you can imagine this like impetuous 14-year-old, like strong, tall, disciplined, but also completely mentally broken. Yeah, and basically, I lived alone by when I was 14. I surfed on friends' couches for years. And I think going through that, right, this is a blessing. When you have a rough childhood, there's always good in it. And I totally believe in something called the law of polarity, which means that if something has a bad side, then it has an equal and equivalent good side. There's always good in every situation if you look for it. So the good side is that I knew exactly what I didn't want, right? I didn't want to be living in uncertainty. I didn't want to be living in this feeling of being overshadowed by this like very strict person. And I think this is what got me into the sales. I was like, no, I'm going to break out and do it my way. And yeah, I did it probably the worst way possible by just digging in and like overworking myself for years. But I think that if you have a traumatic childhood, if you have a traumatic past, then you have got more potential on the other side because you know exactly what you don't want. If somebody grows up in a perfect home and a perfect life, and I wish that for everybody, truly I do, but with the awareness that comes with having the bad stuff, because if you live in a perfect home and you've never had anything bad happen to you, you don't have the motivation to strive for the good. I think it's the exposure to the bad that gives you the drive. And if you look at anyone who's been extraordinarily successful, they faced adversity, and the commonality there is if you've had something where you don't want to, you hit that FTE, as they call it, you hit that event that says, right, no more, you are far more motivated to go ahead and really live life on your terms than somebody who's like, I'm really comfortable and I don't want to take the chance. I'm really scared of losing what I've got. And there's this beautiful quote from Paul McKenna, which is like, most rich people are running away from poverty. Most wealthy people are running towards abundance. And I love that.
That's beautiful, man. All right. So the next part, you said retail. I'm really because this is really interesting for me. So what do you mean by that? Like
So
retail?
retail work is, if you can imagine, like I took my sales experience when my insurance job ended and that company got folded into, we've got a company here in the UK called Curry's PC World, which is a computer white goods store. They sell like fridges and everything like that. And I came into this as a sales guy. So as a sales trainer. And everyone I think should focus on direct customer interaction. So if you can imagine like a store on Christmas, there's thousands of people outside wanting to get in, wanting to get the goods, and you are there serving them. This teaches you so much. All right. It's one of the most undervalued skills that you can get is the ability to just talk to people in that space. Because like a lot of people who come out of college and they go into like a back end coding job or a white collar professional job and they never interact with people, they don't develop the skill actually getting in front of people and solving their problems. And I don't think it's never a career I would recommend for the long term, right? It's kind of like the military thing. I think everyone should do it in a short burst because it's soul draining if you do it for too long. But you can imagine, right, getting the skills and getting the resilience of like hearing people shout at you, hearing people say, this is our problem, fix it, and being able to calmly say, yeah, it is a problem, let me fix it, is huge, right? So anyone that works in like a supermarket, anyone that works in like a retail store, I think it's great because you learn so much from it.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny because like the things that you mentioned, military retail sales, I feel like now like I've gone through them because before, so in 2020, I was like fat and like I was uh, out of shape. And I was at that time I was still blaming my family.
Mm,
I was still at that mentality. But then I met David Goggins.
yeah.
Are you familiar? Yeah. Then I
Yeah.
met David Goggins, and like I listened to his story, and I was like, dude, this guy is like me, but like worse. Like this guy is like me, but worse. And so that's when I started like doing the workouts and essentially doing the military mindset thing, reading more books, doing the self-development thing. And then at that time, I left home because I just realized like, oh my God, I'm stuck with my family. And this is actually the reason why I'm not growing because I'm still stuck in that sheltered family. And in a way, it was toxic because they were giving me the things that I needed, like the lively, making me alive, survival stuff. But they were also hindering my potential to grow because they're like, this is who you are. This is the path. So basically, they gave me the funnel that you told me. They were
Yeah.
funneling me towards that. And so when I left home, my first job was customer service. So I was like call center, email stuff. So this is what I was doing. And you're exactly right. Like it's so hard to handle when someone is asking for a refund and you're trying to explain to them that the trial is over.
Yeah.
You can no longer have a refund because this is the terms of service. And they start like yelling at you.
Yeah. That builds resilience more than anything else. It's like having that direct confrontation. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. And it's interesting that you mentioned the call center because that was my next job. After leaving the Currys, I went to work for the bank. And before I was in mortgage sales, I did, I think, 6 months in just banking customer service, learning the skills. And man, that humbles you pretty quick.
Right. And so do you have like techniques, tactics, strategies that you've developed over time to be like, okay, this is how you handle, customer service, like people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do something for 10 years, you're going to get decent at it. So for me, like, I always try and think, and I bring this into everything, right? It's like, what does this person want? If someone's coming back to you, and like what we saw a lot, maybe 10 years ago, there was a whole bunch of scams around Amazon, right? Like a lot of people I wouldn't say scams, there was a whole lot of misinformation around Amazon. So people would sign up for the Amazon Prime and they would pay for the year and they'd be like, oh my God, I didn't mean to do that. So I was like, well, what does this person want? They actually want to feel heard, like that's a mistake. And even if it's not correctable, right, even if it's not something that we as the bank could correct, they want to feel like, that is something that is easily done. You understand where they came from. They basically want to feel validated. So whenever I'm trying to speak to somebody, and less so these days in the mindset stuff that I do, but I always try and think, well, what does this person want? What are they actually after? Because what they say they want is very rarely what they actually want. People when they make a mistake, they want to feel like, okay, I made a mistake. I don't want to feel foolish. I want to save face. And if you read Seth Godin's stuff, one of the things he said is make the customer feel important, make the customer feel special. So yeah, one of the things that you can do whenever somebody's angry is to be like, okay, here's the situation. This is what's happened. I can see your point of view. I can see where you're coming from. And it's very important that you don't, this is one of the things I learned, right? It's very important that you don't say, oh yeah, that's happened to me too, because people hate that. People want to see, right, this is your journey. This is not about me, it's about you. So, and I think that you mentioned this in a recent tweet about writing for the audience and making them the hero of the story. It's exactly the same thing. We want to make the customer feel special. They want to make them feel like the hero. So whenever someone comes to me and, I was in $5 million plus deals for mortgages, right? Houses in London, flats, these incredibly large transactions. And the same thing was present, when a house fell through, when a deal fell through, when somebody bought at auction and they didn't do the correct surveys. It's like, okay, I can see how this happened. And then it's just really important to stay calm. These are your options going forward. You can either contact this person, you can do this. Which of those sounds like it would solve your problem the best? One thing that I can tell anyone that's listening to this, which is an amazing, amazing lesson that I learned in sales, but it's valuable for everything. Listen way more than you talk in everything. That people love to talk. So like people, when they want to interact with you and they want to talk to you, and it's interesting that you mentioned that other person getting into coaching, because when somebody goes through this sort of transformation in their life of realizing, wait a minute, I'm actually in charge, I'm responsible. One of the first things that they want to do is like share that with everybody, right? They want to say, you're responsible too, and this is what I'm doing. But, not everyone's there. And like, it's really important to just listen and understand. So listen with the intention of understanding. That's the biggest thing I can tell anyone from the last 10 years. Listen with the intention of understanding, and the customer will give you the solution that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's something that I've like also been putting in my mindset lately. I was watching this video, forgot what it was, but he said something. So I was working out. I like to listen to a podcast or something while I'm working out. And then he said something that was really profound in my perspective. Like he said, if you can speak to someone and seek understanding rather than agreement, you'll be powerful.
Yeah,
Right.
I love that. I love that.
And then he talked about like when you're talking to someone and you have that force field with you, where it's like you're not looking to make them one with you and like just have them agree to everything you're saying, but you're actually, seeing their perspective and then again understanding where they come from so that you can be understood as well. Like you influence them in a deeper level.
Well, think about it. Like when someone talks, they don't want to be necessarily sold on somebody else's idea. They want to be told that, yeah, your viewpoint is valid. They want to be validated. And one of the tricky things, because I'm getting into coaching and I'm going through my certification in coaching, and like one of the things I've had to unlearn, agreeing with people, because this is one of the things that a good coach does is they challenge you to be at a higher level, right? So when somebody comes to me and says, I've got this problem and it's insurmountable, it's their thinking that's making it that way. So it's very important, like you said, to make sure they're understood and you get to that root of understanding and like, this is where you are. And then you challenge them. And like, is that actually true? Because like my goal is to get you here. You're down here. Your thinking that got you here won't get you there. But like you said, it's so important to actually understand, because when you come into a conversation, if you've got this preconceived notion of like, you should be at 10K a month, why aren't you there yet? And someone's earning like 1,000, they're going to feel attacked. Whereas if you approach the conversation, it's like, okay, great. Tell me what you're doing at the moment. Tell me what's working for you to get you 4 figures. And then you approach it and be like, okay, I understand you want to get to 5 figures. What you're doing now is working great for here, but we're going to need to make some changes to get you here. Are you open to that? See the difference? It's so transformational. So yeah, I love what you said there. Listen with the intention of just like understanding, because you're going to get so much more from that person.
So I think this leads perfectly to what you said. Now I want to know, because you did separate them. So you said military, retail, and sales. Like how does sales, because the way you approach retail is like, for me, similar to sales, because you're also listening. So how do you separate them, and how would you, like, why did you group them?
So there's a lot of overlap between the two, but in my opinion, there's one big distinction, right? So customer service, retail, that's about building you. And that's about building your resiliency, your ability to react to situations as they come up, your ability to be agile. You learn so much from the process of serving people. Sales, so if you think about retail as service, you're learning how to serve people. And you should always have that mindset, in my opinion, because we're all here to serve each other. So it's always service. And sales is still a similar thing, but sales is problem solving. Okay, so sales is problem solving. So if someone comes to you and said, I've got this broken laptop, can you fix it? A retail or a service role would be, yeah, let me get that fixed. I'll hand it over to the guys who are, repairing things, and I'll get that to you within 24 hours. You manage expectations, you do a great job, and the customer leaves thinking, yeah, I was served. When you're in sales, you have that same person come to you and you ask different questions. You're like, well, what made it break? And they're like, oh, I was video editing and the hard drive fried. I'm like, okay, do you do a lot of video editing? She's like, yeah, it's my main job, Well, what we could do is we could repair this for you, and, it might last for another year, or we could get you this new laptop, which is specifically designed for video editing. It has a faster SSD, so you're not going to burn it out so fast. And this will actually solve your problem, where I'm not just serving you. I'm not just taking the initial incident and being like, let's put a patch on it. I'm actually going to solve your problem. I'm going to give you this, MacBook or whatever it is, designed for what you do. It's got a pretty penny attached to it, but so does your solution. So does what you want out of it. You want to have this solved, so let's get it solved. That's sales.
That's a big shift, man. Problem solving versus service.
Yeah, I think service is like tick and turn, right? You get a problem in, you push a problem to, you're like almost redirecting the problem to where the solution lives. But then with sales, you're guiding someone and you're actually solving it for them. That's the difference.
So now we've gone through that. So your journey, you said insurance, and then you did some retail, and then you went back to sales. Is that correct?
I mean, the sales was everything, right? It was all sales, but like the insurance was like my first 5 years.
Yeah.
And then when that company folded, I actually spent a few months just going back to college, which I realized very quickly was a bad idea. And then I went to go find a job. And at the time, I still had the mentality. I wasn't ready for self-employment at that time. I still thought that the only way I can earn money is to go work for it, which is a complete lie, by the way. So I went to find a job, and my friend got me a job in this store, in this PC store. And I very quickly got good at retail. I very quickly got good at the sales stuff. And I was actually known as the pharmacist because this was the time when BlackBerry tablets were huge. So we would actually package the BlackBerry with all the stuff that you would need to go with it, all the peripherals. And I got very, very good at selling those. So I got called the pharmacist because I sold so many tablets.
Dude, that is so...
So like when the iPad came out, that was my thing. I was locked in. But it was very clear to me that this job had a very low ceiling. I could develop the very best skills. I could be the best in the world at this thing, but I would never exceed a certain limit. So I hit the ceiling pretty quick. And then I thought, well, I know I'm meant for more, right? Because I've always had this ridiculous hero complex. And that comes from probably being a military son. But I very quickly realized that I need to play a bigger game. I need to be bigger. And that led me towards the banking sector and the industry of finance. And that's where I spent the rest of my employed life. So got into banking, I learned the ropes, I learned management, and then I learned mortgages. And mortgages is where I spent most of my time, 10 years. And like that is such a regulated, it is such a strict market that if you can make it there, you can make it almost anywhere. Because it's like if you can lift the weight with all the shackles on you, when you get to self-employment, which is what I'm doing now, man, it's just like taking all these skills. Like that scene where Goku's training with like the 10-ton weights and he takes them off. It's like that. So yeah, military service, retail for the ability to develop yourself, and then sales for the ability to actually solve problems. I think those 3 skills are essential.
All right. So now after mortgage, how did you transition to X, online business?
So that's a really good question. So when I left my job, I didn't have a plan. And it was just a case of like, this is the best chance I'm ever going to get to make a clean break, because I knew that there was a part of me that loved the safety of the job. There was a part of me that loved the safety. I've never been short of money. I've never had less than I need. And I never thought I would. But there was part of me that was scared, right, to leave the job and the security of knowing that this is a solid paycheck. It's always going to cover my expenses. But I thought to myself in April of this year, right, I've been studying self-development, personal growth. I've been studying mindset for years at this point, for 2 years. And I thought, this is my chance to put it all into practice. So I left the job and I lasted 2 days. My wife said to me, take a year off, just take a year off, get your thoughts together, be a house husband.
Yeah.
I lasted 2 days before I was like, I can't do this. I need to be spending my time on something.
Yeah.
I put the PlayStation over there. I'm not sure if you can see it in the frame, but I had this and that's barely been turned on. And I was like, okay. Because I originally wanted to be a streamer, right? Because I got the streaming setup and I was like, yeah, let's be a streamer. But I just couldn't do it. I was like, I know too much about how the mind works. I can't spend my time doing this. So like, it became very clear to me that my goal in this life was to replicate what my heroes had done. And if I look at my hero, Bob Proctor, who basically went from being this person who was $6,000 in debt, earning $4,000 a year, so in that cycle that most people find themselves in, to being this multi-millionaire impacting so many lives, I thought, I've got 40, maybe 50 years left to live, if I'm lucky. I'm 37 as of last week. So I've got 40 years if I'm lucky. How do I want to spend that? Because the time's going to pass and I could be I could be the kind of person who is like internal, self-serving, just trying to make me okay. Or I could be the kind of person that spends that time trying to help others break out of this conditioning, this NPC programming. I know a lot of people call it like the Matrix. I don't like that. I'm not on that train. But I do believe that the programming that we go through in school, right? I'm just going to go slightly off tangent. We are programmed to fear failure above all else. If you fail the test, you won't get a good job. If you fail the test, you'll have to stay back a year. It's like the end of the world, right? Whereas to actually succeed, failure is inevitable and it's perfect, right? It's a stepping stone. You learn what doesn't work. So that's one of the first things that we need to break to get out of that NPC programming. We then need to realize that what we give our attention to is what we create. What we focus on is what our life becomes. So we need to start focusing on things that we actually want instead of the news, the politics, everything that people tell us to focus on, because they want our focus there. And I learned very quickly that there are 3 currencies. I'm not sure if you've heard this theory before. Okay, so the first one is money. Money is easy. Money's easy, right? Money flows. It's a currency. Anyone can earn money by just doing basic manual labor. It's pretty simple to come by. Then you've got time, right? So time is a non-renewable resource. Time is higher than money. And time is something that people exchange for money. And there's a reason why that's a bad idea. And then finally, you've got attention. And attention is what everyone actually wants from you. Because what you give your attention to, you give your energy to. And we're all energetic beings at the end of the day. And what you give your attention to and you focus on becomes what you are. If you focus on how bad the world is, you're going to start thinking the world's bad. And then it's really easy to sell you on the world being bad and be like, you should be mad at these people. So the attention is what everyone really wants. That's what people pay billions for. That's what advertisers are paying billions for. It's your attention. Where are you putting it? So they can sell you stuff. Those are the 3 currencies. And the way I look at it is like a video game. So money is the copper, right? Money's easy to come by. Money's copper. Then you've got time, which is silver. More precious, but still not as good as gold, which is attention. So that's how I look at it. And what I decided was like, I'm going to spend my life focusing on this problem, which is like, where do people spend their attention? Because if they keep spending their attention where they have been spending it, they're going to get the results that they've currently got. And like for the longest time, I was a huge atheist, right? I mentioned growing up with a really strict dad and a really soft mum. My mum was a Jehovah's Witness. So like, if I'm not sure if you know them, they are like Christians. They're like super Christian. So I grew up in a very religious household and it never made any sense to me because, you could see all these bad things happening in the world. And it's like, if your God exists and he's this man on the cloud, why is this stuff happening? I think a lot of people have that realization. And then I became an atheist for like 20 years. And I was like, show me the science or I'll show you the door. But recently, like over the last 3 years, I've gone back and I've started studying all the spiritual stuff. And like people were saying this thousands and thousands of years ago. And I always come back to as within, so without. Because I think everything we need to focus on is in those 4 words. What we focus on, we become. And that's something that everyone's agreed on. All the great religious leaders have agreed on that one point, right? We become what we think about. And that's why people want your attention, because what you think about is what you become. So what do? We start focusing on better stuff. We start focusing our mind on the good, on the plenty, rather than on the scarcity. Because I heard this great quote the other day, right? Most people worry about money 95% of the time, but 95% of the time they don't have a money problem. Like you literally only have a money problem when you go to pay for something and you don't have enough money. The rest of the time, it's simply a mental problem. You're just worried about that happening. So like if you can put your attention for 95% of the time on the fact that you've got plenty, you're going to get plenty. You're going to create it. And have you read Psycho-Cybernetics?
Almost, just a little bit.
It's such a good book, right? It actually describes something called the psycho-cybernetic loop, which is for me, who love science, because like I say, I don't like the term manifestation, right? I don't like that term because that implies you don't do anything. I love the science behind it. Reality creation is my jam, but I don't like the trendy manifestation stuff. But like Maxwell Maltz actually put this into a practical way of looking at it, right? So he said that your identity and your beliefs and your actual identity, right? So your beliefs inform your thoughts. So you think in congruence with your identity, and that in turn creates the feeling, how you feel. If you think bad things, if you think scary things, you're going to feel scared. You're going to feel like you could be attacked. If you think thoughts of abundance and like everything's going to work out for you, you'll start to feel that way, and that informs your actions. So if you feel fantastic, you're going to show up fantastically. You're going to show up in a powerful way, and that then in turn gets you the results. And the results that you get reinforce the belief, and that's the loop. So it's belief, feeling, action, result, belief. And what we can do is we can break the belief. And this is why I'm into mindset coaching, which is helping people break limiting beliefs and install new ones. Because if you can do that, you then have new thoughts, which inspire new feelings, which inspire new actions, which inspire new results. And that's how you change. But most people want to change the action without changing the belief. And this is why people grind for years, and they grind and they grind and they really try. And like they just put in so many hours, but they never change the belief that they're worthy, or that money's easy, or that they never change the belief that they have like a certain ceiling that they can get past. Like in the UK, as an example, the average salary is £35,000, which translates to about £2,000 a month. Most people who leave their job and try and go self-employment never break past that, because they have a belief that that's normal. And it's not the fact that they can't do it, because you can sell something worth $1,000 to 30 people or 300 people. It's exactly the same mechanism. The only thing that limits you is your mind. And like, that's one of the things that we've got to realize, that we're all self-made, but only the successful admit it.
That's beautiful, man. I'm just thinking about now, because, so again, like when you were speaking, I was reflecting on my own story. So again, if you don't mind me sharing.
Please.
So how I got on X was, so I was doing night shifts, the customer service that I was mentioning. So that's my, that's my first official job. Like I've worked odd jobs. It's like freelance jobs where I fix files and all that stuff. And I was also in university. And then like what happened was when I was so I was doing university, I was doing my night shift, and I was like only sleeping 4 hours per day because I needed to go to university, and I was like in that cycle. But I decided to write online in Quora. And then, dude, like there was one time where I was in trouble, or not I, but the company I was working for was in trouble. And so like my finances were getting fucked, basically. 'Cause I was in trouble, man. And so I asked my mother, like, if she could help me, because I didn't have any help other than her. So I asked her, and she basically refused. And I was like, damn, I'm fucked. Like, what am I going to do now? And so what I did first, I realized that, like, what am I even doing in university? The only reason why I'm in university is because my family told me that to succeed, I need to go to university. I was like, well, screw this. So I basically left university at that point. Okay. I have like Twitter going on. So let me go all in on that. And at that point, I had like $5,000 in my savings. And that's a lot in the Philippines. But I decided to go all in on X because I don't know, like that belief of what you mentioned. Like I just believed that I could make it. And if I couldn't make it work, I was thinking I'm broke anyway. If I lose, I have nothing to lose. Like I'm broke anyway. So if I lose there, like I'm might as well. So I actually invested, okay, but it was payment plans. So I bought like 13K worth of courses and all that stuff, even though I have 5,000 in my bank account. And I was left, because of the payment plans, I was left with like $1,000, and I had to like live with that for the next 3 months or something. Dude, like all that time, I was just like grinding, and I was just like doing anything I can to make things work. And I just believe that, like something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. And it actually fucking happened. Like it actually worked. So yeah, man, it's like, I think there's also, for me, like, I don't know, what is your take on this? Because I thought I was crazy, because everyone thought I was crazy for doing that risky thing. Like I was just I thought I was a maniac for some reason.
Mm.
So what's your take on that, like risk?
That is your programming. That is your programming coming out 100% of the time, because we are absolutely programmed to be risk averse, right? Seek the safe path,
Yeah.
follow the herd. Earl Nightingale said once, if you follow what the crowd does, 95% of the time the crowd's wrong. So if you find 100 people walking in one direction and you find 5 people walking in the other direction, if you follow the 5, you'll be right 95% of the time. The herd, 95% of people, are living by the programming. They're living as NPCs. And if you follow an NPC, they only can follow the programming. Like, as I was saying before, I rejected spirituality so hard for so many years. And it's only recently that I started to understand the impact of it. And I'm not religious by any stretch. I don't believe in, because all religion is consensus on what something means, perpetuation of that. But I believe that everyone should be self-taught when it comes to spirituality and the mindset. So one of the things that I went back and looked at was the Bible. And in the Bible, there are so many quotes. There are so many quotes that like give credence to this whole manifestation thing, even though I hate the word. But like if you look back at Mark, right? In the Bible, it says, if thou can believe, all things are possible to him that believe. And that means all things, you know. So if you can think about it, and like the mechanism behind this is if you can get into the point where you think, yes, this is going to happen, this is normal, you know, I'm going to succeed. And like in your situation, you did it perfectly. You went all in. It's like, I'm going to succeed because I'm going all in. Because I'm going all in, I'm going to succeed. And it works. It always works. Works 100% of the time. So there's no risk. The risk is in, and like you can probably attest to this, like somebody who gets to that point where they're like, I'm going to succeed or I'm going to die.
Yeah.
They're going to succeed.
Yeah.
Because like, how often do you actually die from trying this stuff?
Yeah.
Very, very rarely. So if you give yourself those options, I'm going to succeed or I'm going to die, you're going to succeed. If you go all in, and there's a brilliant quote, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like, no one can stop the person that will stake even survival on the attainment of their desire. I think it was Napoleon Hill that said that. But it's like, no one can stop him, because when you walk with that knowing, right? Because there's faith, there's trust, and then there's knowing. And faith is beautiful. Faith is basically, you know that it's going to happen, so you walk with that knowledge that I'm going to win. I'm going to win. There might be setbacks, but I'm going to win. And then there's a lower level, which is what a lot of people have, which is trust. Like, I'm trusting, but trust has the potential to be wrong. So you're kind of like half in, half out.
Yeah.
Whereas when you commit, when you burn the boats, as they say, when you go all in, you cannot be stopped, because you are all in, and you could hit a brick wall. And like Mosey says, you just keep hitting that wall. You just keep hitting that wall. No amount of bricks can stop me if I never stop.
Yeah.
So that comes back to the Bible. And this is why I've gone back so deep into the spiritual side. And it's interesting, the word confidence comes up a lot, right? And I recently encountered a guy on YouTube called Nero Knowledge. And Nero he's a guy from the UK, and he's like got such an interesting way of breaking stuff down. But he works on a lot of etymology, right? The structure of words. And confidence comes from, or faith rather, comes from the Latin word fides, which is to have conviction, complete knowing, complete trust. So confidence means con with fides, faith. Confidence is with faith. So you do it in confidence. You do it with faith that it's going to work out. And if you go back and, have you read Think and Grow Rich?
Not yet.
Man, Think and Grow Rich is a game changer for you. It's a game changer for everyone. I love that book. When I started on X, I actually started reading it in Spaces as my book club. Yeah. And I'm actually going to go back and do that on my YouTube channel now. Just read Think and Grow Rich, because like everyone should read this book, and it's free because it's in the public domain. But in that book, Napoleon Hill states, and he studied the 500 richest people in the world, and all their lessons were condensed into this one book, and they all said, walk in faith that it's already done. And like if you go back and you study any of the really successful people, like Kanye, for example, like when he got his first record deal, he's like, I'm the greatest. I know I'm the greatest. And like people will look at that and they'll be like, you're delusional. And you know, when you had your, you know, I'm going to go all in on X, people might have looked at you and be like, you're delusional.
Yeah,
but
everyone told me that.
They can't see this. Life is inside out, you know, as in heaven, which is your imagination, so on earth, inside out, right? As within, so without. So when we see it in our mind and we're like, this is now my reality and I am just going to express it through that loop that we talked about earlier, people will call you delusional because they're going from the effect. They're looking at the effect. They're not looking at the cause. And the cause is your imagination and your self-image. Because if you can change that, and I give this example to my clients, right? If you take Elon as an example, and you take a factory worker, you strip them of all their money, you take away their name. So you've just got person A and person B, and you put them in a random city and you say, work, get money. Which one's going to get money?
Elon.
Of course, because he knows that he's a rich person. He knows he's wealthy. You could take away a wealthy person's money and they know they're wealthy. They'll get it right back. There's like so many examples of that happening. Whereas if you take somebody with a conditioned ceiling on their wealth, I can never earn more than $2,000. That's normal, which is the key. Then they might hit 2,000, but then they'll stop themselves. They'll be like, I'm done. I'm earning what's normal. You've got to be delusional. You've got to be like, I'm no longer taking the evidence of the senses. I am taking my internal evidence, because this is the imagination, and the imagination is what people call God. And to God, all things are possible.
Dude, that's deep.
And I can keep going, man. I've got a list of quotes.
Dude, I'm getting like goosebumps all over my body when you're speaking.
Well, this is what I realized, right? It's like, this is what I want to do. I've always had this skill, and I was a dungeon master for years, right? Play Dungeons and Dragons.
Never.
I love it. That was my first dollar online, by the way. I ran professional games of that.
Okay.
That's how I made my first bit of money online. It's like, internet money's possible. But
did you stream?
We didn't stream. It was a private thing, so people paid me to do it. So it was like, I couldn't stream it without their consent. But we did it on like this beautiful virtual tabletop with like all the sound effects and stuff. It was beautiful.
Dude, that's
I had to step away from it though, because it's like, this, I could spend my life doing this and I could make maybe $4,000 a month, $200 a night. Great. And I could be double as successful as the average Joe, but I would feel the same emptiness that I felt before, because I have this mission to help people break out of that thing. Because like, if I look to the end of my life and I'm like 80, 85, 90, if I'm lucky, and I look back and be like, okay, well, what did I do? Because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, is like, how did you spend that precious time that you had? If I could look back and say, I help people break out of the programming and I help them step into their potential, anyone can be a millionaire. Anyone can be rich. Anyone can get healthy. Everyone faces challenges, but you can always make the best of the situation that you're in. Most people are limited only by their thinking, and that thinking can be changed. Most people think it's set in stone, but it's not. You can always change who you are being inside. And if I can help people do that, their results naturally change. Like I say, if you take a billionaire and you take away all their money, they'll get it right back, because they have the consciousness of being a billionaire. They have the financial, I like the word frequency, because like I understand it more. I never used to like that word, but like it is genuinely like they're living on that level. If I'm a billionaire, I'll just give this to everyone for free, right? It is trivially easy to become a millionaire. You simply sell something worth $1,000 to 1,000 people, and you are a millionaire. It's so simple, right? There's no complexity to it. You could break it down. You could sell something worth 10,000 to 100 people, 100,000 to 10 people, something worth $1 million to one person. You're just solving different problems, right? But the mechanics of getting there are so easy. And yet, if you ask the average person on the street, how could you earn $1 million? They'd look at you like you were green. They'd look at you like, no one earns $1 million. It's not normal. And that's the problem. It's never the thing. It's the belief in the thing. So that's what I decided I wanted to do, was help people break past that, to see what's possible and to believe a new reality essentially into being, because it can happen. And the only thing that stops you is yourself.
100%, dude. I just reminded like what you mentioned earlier with Mosey hitting the wall over and over again.
Yeah.
I know, like, I'm a David Goggins fan, so no brainer. I was also a fan of like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know he has this like quote that is just like it's so memorable. He said that I never lost a game, I just lost time. So it's like, if we continued playing, I would still beat you. So it's what you said, like, it's either he wins or he dies.
Yeah. there's a great quote right from Will Smith. And think of what you want of Will Smith. He's a work in progress, like we all are. But he said, "When I get on a treadmill, I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die. I'm either going to hit my target or I'm going to die. I will keep going until one of those things happens." And when you've got that level of conviction, you cannot be stopped. I truly believe that somebody with a level of conviction, and that is again confidence, confidas, with complete and utter conviction, they can't be stopped. If someone says, "I don't care what this takes, I don't care how many reps I have to put in, I'm going to make it." And like I look back at people like Michael Jordan, they knew they were going to be successful before they were. You look back at Muhammad Ali, right? One of the greats, one of the all-time greats. Think about the way he talked to himself. Like even in his early interviews, he's like, "I'm the greatest there ever was. No one's better than me." And like, it's true. It's true. And like the thing, if I could tell people one thing, it is to walk by faith and not by sight. Okay, and what does that mean? It sounds very mystical. To walk by faith is to walk with the understanding that what you see in your mind and what you create and accept as true, because your mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined, what you accept as true becomes true. You make it so. It's not mystical, it's not magical, it's science, because your brain literally filters out things that are not in alignment with your beliefs. You have an area of the brain called the reticular activation system, and the job of that is to make sure that what actually is recorded by awareness is in line with your beliefs. You get what you look for. This is why if you think of a red car, you'll see red cars. And without getting too deep into this, because I'm conscious of time, the ability to program your mind to see things differently is a game changer. Like the average person, the human animal sees 0.0035% of all spectrums of light. There's an electromagnetic spectrum of light like we see between, I think it's infrared and the other one, ultraviolet. We see like such a small percentage of what is actually there, and yet we say this is real and this stuff is not real, but we're just not aware of it. We just can't pick it up. Like a dog can, a bat can, scientific equipment can, but this thing can't. Because we don't see with our eyes, right? Our eyes simply reflect light into our brain. The brain is what makes the picture. So if you have something that you don't believe, if you don't believe that people can be successful, someone could be walking by you and have $5,000 in their hand and try and give it to you, and you literally won't even notice them. You'll be in that trance. And it's like so interesting when you study the science of this. It's like people will literally see, and like a billionaire, if we go back to our example, a billionaire will see the opportunity, whereas a broke person won't. And they'll act on it. And that's the difference. It's not magic, it's just science. Science is just catching up to spirituality. So who knows?
That's true, man. Like what you mentioned there, like there's also something about, you mentioned eyes. So the eyes is like, it gets strained easily. It's like, that's why you only have a pupil and it can only concentrate on a certain thing. Yeah. But the things that you concentrate on are the things that you see. That's why you mentioned like the red car effect. So if you think of how to get rich, you'll actually be looking for opportunities to get rich.
100%. Yeah. And like, even if you just take one really simple step, which is to like, if you currently think rich people are bad, and this is the whole thing, right? We're programmed to think rich people are bad. Just go back and look at Titanic, the film, and just think what happens. But if we focus on the fact that money is available rather than money is scarce, if we move from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking, why can't I earn money? How can I earn money? If that is the only change you ever make, you will be infinitely richer. You'll be 10xing your results just from going from I can't make money to money's possible. Then if you go from money is possible to money is easy, you're going to 10x your income again. And if you go from money is easy to money is automatic, money is natural, guess what happens?
All right, man. Dude, this was a beautiful conversation.
It was amazing.
I do ask this question to my audience or my guest because I want them to say something that's in their mind. If I could have asked something that you wish I asked, what would it have been and how would you answer it?
Great question. Great question. I suppose like the question I would ask myself, I was like, Will, what are you about? It's like, what do you do? Because this is a question I've only just answered for myself. Like, I'm not sure if you see my X feed, but like I've been really digging deep because I believe that the deeper the foundations, the stronger the structure. And I want to build something that's going to last for 50 years, more than that. Like I'm going to last for maybe 50 years, but like I want this to last for centuries. I want to create the greatest awareness for people who feel like life is against them, to show them that life is for them, right? I want to be able to create something so that people can go from being your average Joe worker with this mentality of life is hard, life is struggle, into the knowledge and knowing and the experience and the money in the bank that proves that money is easy, life is for you and not against you. A lot of my life was spent playing the game of life on a hard mode, playing against myself. And you don't have to do that. I've seen people who are 18 making like 7 figures. Whereas you look at, you just look back at the teachers who taught them in school struggling to earn 40K. Life is easy when you know it's easy. Life is easy when you can work your way into believing it's easy. The one thing that I would say that I can leave people with, the one thing I would ever teach people if they came up to me and said, what's the most valuable thing that you could ever teach me, is that life is an inside game. Life is an inside game. As within, so without. I can't say it any better than that.
Beautiful, man. All right. So to anyone who wants to consume more of your content, where can they find you? Is there anything you're launching? Have a newsletter? Anything?
Yeah, so currently x.com is probably the best place to keep up with what I'm up to. I post once per day, sometimes more, but at least once per day. And I am also a community manager for the Hero Academy, which is my school group. That is a place where it's a free resource that I run challenges for the community to start to increase their skills and also their mindsets. And for those who are struggling, those who really want to break through their ceilings, I also run a mastermind to hold people accountable to that higher level of thinking, because it's the consistency over time that actually changes the individual, the behavior. That's what I'm about. In the future, newsletter, YouTube channel will be more, because I have a YouTube channel, but it's very sparse. More of that will be incoming. And I just look forward to playing this game at a much bigger level.
Awesome. So that's the Will Carter on Twitter. And I'll see you around, Will. Thanks for
Fantastic,
having
my
me.
friend. Thank you for the conversation.